Hi everyone, my name's Emma. Welcome back to the Champions of Wonder podcast. Today we are going to be talking about the lesson of persistence through what happened between Netflix and Blockbuster. Most of us know what Netflix is, a site where we can find a great deal of original content from Netflix, but also where many movies that we have watched and loved as well as new movies that we may have not had access to before. Blockbuster is a store chain that had movies and shows that you could go and rent, but you had to go in person. You had to pick up the DVD, it used to be VCR tapes, but you would have to go in person, you would have to pick it up, and then you would go home, watch it, and then bring it back. And then Netflix understood that they were going to need to transition to what the internet would offer someday. But Blockbuster really didn't see any issues with the way that they were running their stores. They didn't think that the internet was going to become this big thing. So Blockbuster eventually gave Netflix the opportunity to come and meet with them, and Netflix stated their case and offered Netflix up for $50 million. And Blockbuster basically laughed Netflix out of the room and told them to get out, that this idea wasn't worth almost anything, let alone $50 million. And Netflix struggled for the next few years, almost going bankrupt multiple times. But as the internet was getting bigger and more people were beginning to use it and understand what could be done with the internet, Netflix began to have a turnaround, and Netflix began to grow. And because of that, Netflix began to change the entertainment industry. But what very much happened was Blockbuster ended up going bankrupt because people didn't want to have to spend all of this time going and getting movies, but rather have access to many more movies and instantly. So Netflix began to change the industry. It created a space where people could go and watch movies and shows, and ended up creating even its own original content. And now we can see that Netflix has completely changed the game, where other streaming sites such as HBO Go and Hulu, as well as Amazon Prime, are some of the different places that we can continue to seek that kind of same experience. But none of them are ever going to be as big as Netflix, because Netflix was the original one to do it. And what can we learn from that? Netflix is now worth over $200 billion, but they were willing to sell for $50 million. And there's a few lessons to be learned there. And the first one being that we need to understand the worth of our ideas, and that even if somebody is unwilling to listen or to accept them, that we have to understand how powerful they can be. And that is, of course, if we truly believe in them and truly can see how it's going to help so many people. If we have those different qualities behind our ideas, we need to hold fast to them. And oftentimes, we can create things that the world just isn't ready for yet. And what Netflix was understanding about the internet back in 2000 is something that was unthinkable. To tell somebody back in 2000 what the world would look like in regards to technology today, it would be very hard to believe. So if you can project into the future and imagine what that next phase is going to look like based off of the different pieces of information that you have now that you can predict, that's very powerful. Netflix was able to do that and ended up becoming the change in the entertainment industry that nobody suspected that it would be. And because of that, we need to continue to be empowered by our own choices and understand that if we have to stand away from the crowd to stand up for what we believe in, that is okay, and that someday people will understand. But it is okay if people don't right now. And another important point to that is that if Netflix had given up, we would not have what we have now in the entertainment industry, where so many people can be part of that creation of new content, and those who didn't have people believe in their ideas oftentimes have been very successful because Netflix decided to pick them up. And that is just another important part of understanding that we can be that change that we want to see if we decide to believe in ourselves. Imagine the world we would have if Netflix decided to believe Blockbuster and believe that they weren't worthy of creating something that was going to change the world. And if they didn't, what would the world look like today? Maybe another site would have come up, but the thing is, we won't know and we will never know. All we can know is that this is the world that we understand today, and it is up to us to decide what direction it moves forward from here. And if we can decide that there is a positive direction that we want to move in, and we believe that the world would be better off for it, that's what we should be doing. If we have something to give to the world, to add value into this world, we need to continue to pursue it no matter how many people tell us it's not worth it. If we are adding value, if we're being kind, if we're being grateful along the process, if we are doing what is authentic to us and something that we truly believe in, it doesn't matter what everyone else is saying as long as we believe in ourselves and the choices that we make. And that really comes down to it is we all get to make choices every single day. And the thing is, we can only make so many choices every single day. And yes, sometimes we will make mistakes, but as long as we learn from those mistakes and the lessons from them and the lessons from what the world has to offer, we can really adjust with that new information. That new data can create better decisions, better choices, and a better direction for us to travel in. Netflix created a new world with the idea that they had. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not Netflix, I'm not going to create this huge idea, that's okay. We're not all going to create the next Amazon or the next Netflix or the next Uber, but we all can create a small difference or a big difference if we choose to do so. And that is when we are going to live our most authentic truth and live in the most authentic way that we possibly can. And that is really the point of being a person, being a human in this world, is how can I help myself to help others? And if that is not the goal of what we are doing, if we're not creating value, if we're not creating intention, we are oftentimes falling to things that aren't worthy of our time, and we get to choose how we spend that time. So we can either be upset about what's going on in the world and not doing anything about it, or we can take the moments that we need to recuperate, to really feel what we're feeling, and then accept that the past is the past. This is where I am right now, and how can I project into the future? And oftentimes, we don't think about the future potential of what we can do. If Netflix based off what it could do off of what it was able to do at that moment in time, we wouldn't have Netflix. If Netflix didn't believe and understand that in the future, everyone's going to have access to the internet, everyone's going to want everything to be quicker and faster and more efficient. If they didn't understand the potential of what the world could be and of what they could provide, they would not have gotten to where they are. They would have gotten stuck with what people were telling them right then and there. But we need to be able to project into the future the potential that we're going to have then. You are not the summation of everything that you've done or everything you've experienced. And we often hold our future to what we have currently done right now. But the thing is, we're going to do so much more in between this moment right now and 5 years from now. And oftentimes we don't take into account what we're going to be able to do across those 5 years and the potential that those 5 years hold to project us to that belief and that person that we want to be in 5 years. So it's a combination of a few different things, right? We need to look at who is telling us what, believing in ourselves, projecting our potential through those years that we want to achieve something at the end of, and understand that persistence is going to set us apart. If you start doing something and you do it for 3 weeks, and then you stop, what could you have done in the next 3 months if you had just continued. Because the thing is, the time is going to pass anyway. If Netflix had stopped and decided, you know what, they said I'm not good enough, I can't do this, then they would have seen that in 10 years from that point, somebody else would have come up with such an idea or would have just created something very similar, and Netflix would have been very disappointed that they just didn't commit and hold on to the truth that they understood. And if we're not doing that, if we're not believing in ourselves first, we can't hope that somebody else someday will enough for us to do it. We have to give ourselves the validation, the understanding, the beliefs that we can do it. And oftentimes when we're like, oh, I can't do it, I can't do this, it's a voice inside your head that isn't your own. You fully well know who you are at the core. And oftentimes society hands us different personalities that we feel we have to take on in order to fit into the world. But we're all different, and we all have different ideas and perspectives that we can bring to the world. And we need to be empowered by them if we want to change the world. If you're different, understand we are all different and we all have something to share with the world. And we need to empower ourselves first so that we can empower those around us. Netflix empowered so many other sites to take on the same task. They empowered different people whose ideas were rejected for so long that they ended up giving them the space to create and had millions of people view their creation after so many had told them, you know what, you can't simply be here. And we'll get into more of those in the next podcast of the different places that we can continue to learn, and that all those shows on Netflix are also teaching us lessons and views and perspectives about the world that many of us already understand. Because again, we can only see the world through the lens that we first understand it in our mind. And so reality is created through this collective choice that we all are getting to make. And if we get to choose all the time, we also get to choose where we spend our time, where we spend money, where we continue to go every single day, and what mindset we go to all the time. And we will continue to talk, we will continue to grow, we will continue to develop into the people that we want, if we choose to do so. And it all begins with a choice. I hope to see you next time on the Champions of Wonder podcast, where we're going to continue to go into intellectual property. How can we have and own the rights to our intellectual property, and what does that really mean? What does that mean in the context of how others have not had access to keeping their rights? And there's many important lessons to be learned in that topic and in almost anything else that you can think of. Continue to wonder about the world that you live in. Have that childlike curiosity to move forward, to embrace, and to understand that you are moving through a world that is made through the understanding of your own mind. Tune in next time, but until then, have an amazing day.